Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Unkempt as always. Really need to get on top of that at some point, but we're not here to discuss my personal grooming. We are here to keep going on with the Alchemist build guide, and here we are nearing the pinnacle of the Alchemist extract abilities. These are getting to be some fairly interesting powers that you can make use of, and, well, let's just go ahead and dive right in and show you what I'm talking about here. Starting us off, for our 5th level extracts, we have Communal Stone Skin. Now, this works exactly like the Stone Skin spell from the 4th level extracts, except that you can divide the duration amongst creatures that you touch in 10-minute chunks. They'll still block up to 150 points of damage at that 10 points of damage unless it's an adamantine weapon per attack. So, you can get a great deal of use out of this. Is it going to last as long? No, you're dividing that duration up, but really, this is something you're going to be throwing down probably pre-fight, when you know you've got a big fight coming up and you want to make sure everybody's able to keep going. Maybe you don't have to divide it up amongst everybody, but throwing it down on yourself, the party's mage, the cleric, anybody who's got some significant spell casting ability you're going to be depending on, those characters tend to be a little bit squishier. Not as heavy armor, not as many hit points. Fighters, rangers, paladins, barbarians, they all have a whole bevy of hit points that they can rely upon, and heavier armor to make themselves harder to hit. So, for all you squishy types, this will be incredibly useful. But in those instances where you do feel like maybe everybody, including your heavy hitters, need to have this extra protection, throw it down on them, especially if you know you're going to be brawling with the big bad evil guy, the main antagonist, the big bad themselves. Get prepared ahead of time with this spell. Absolutely a must-have grab for any alchemist, especially our bomb thrower. Hell, even Mr. Hyde can make incredible use of this. This is useful for everyone. Going right along with that, another buff, we have Overland Flight. Now, this one's target self only, lasts 1 hour a level, so 5th level extracts come in at level 13, so this will let you fly around for 13 hours if you select this one first. And it works like fly, but you move at 40 feet per round, or 30 feet with medium or heavy armor, or if you're carrying a medium or heavy load. You will also gain a bonus on your fly checks equal to 1/2 your caster level. And so that'll help make up for possible lack or deficiency in skill points that you may or may not have put into fly. And this will help you boost that a little bit, making you maneuver more effectively. And if you're moving at max speed, you will cover 64 miles in 8 hours. And since this is lasting 13 hours, you'll go over that pretty significantly. Or 48 miles in 8 hours if you're encumbered, as noted above, with heavy armor or heavier loads. And then another one here, delayed consumption. Now, delayed consumption, I really like. It's specific to the alchemist. It works so incredibly well, and I have my own interpretation on it here. We'll get to that in just a moment. You target yourself unless you have the infusion discovery. Lasts 1 day per level, so this will last 13 days, or until you use it. Drinking this extract will let you, in the immediate following round, drink another, but not have its effects kick in until you decide you want them to. You're limited to a maximum of 4th level extracts. This is useful for you immensely, but this is also useful for the rest of the party if you have the infusions extract. You can pour this down somebody else's throat or let them drink it and then give them another extract to drink, say like the haste spell. Having a haste extract on board for everybody for up to 13 days can be hugely useful. Everybody getting extra movement or an extra attack, extra a bonus to their initiative and to their defense and attack. Absolutely incredible. You really want to have this one. Now, I will say some DMs, some storytellers may interpret this a little bit more, in a little bit more of a closed off fashion. They may not be as loose with it. For me, I think that this would work for the rest of the party. It's not something that would be limited to just the alchemist, but, you know, consult your DM, they'll let you know. And then after that, we have Sending, and a very incredible communication spell. You target one creature, and it will last for 1 round. Maybe just a little bit longer, but, loose. It will last 1 round for you. You send a 25-word message to one creature that you are familiar with. The subject will recognize that the message is from you if they know you. You can send it to somebody that doesn't know you, that you are familiar with, if you've met them in disguise or only through visions or whatever the situation is. The target can answer you immediately with this spell, and they will understand you even if they only have down to an intelligence score of 1. That said, how well they're able to respond is limited by their intelligence. So, you might have a little bit of a mixed bag there if you're sending this off to somebody with an intelligence of 3 or some kind of an animal. But in any case, this works really well for the party. It lets you communicate silently, quickly, and instantaneously. You can even contact targets on other planes of existence, but they will have a minimum of a 5% chance of the spell failing, with local conditions on whatever plane they're on potentially affecting it further. Say they're on a remote layer of the abyss being just so incredibly hostile to life and not having a consistent set of rules layer to layer on the plane, or even just consistent rules within a particular layer, you may see increased chances. Certainly, I would increase the chances of failure. But that's not all we have for the Alchemist. Oh, no. We are going to keep going on down with different examples of decreasing utility. Also, some things that I have my own particular thoughts on that need to be gone over. Now, things like contact other plane. Now, this takes 10 minutes to cast. It's not something that you're going to be using in combat, obviously. It's a divination spell, and in this case, it's a divination extract. I kind of like the idea of you mixing together a mysterious liquid, drinking it, and suddenly you're talking to extraplanar beings. But you target yourself, and it requires concentration. It will last as long as you are concentrating for, or until you run out of questions. You cast your mind out to another plane, seeking answers from the beings that live there, or the particular being that you contact. These beings typically don't like being bothered, and so they will give you one-word answers, and you can ask one question per round at a max of 1 question per 2 caster levels. Something to note is that with this particular spell, you have a chance of taking intelligence and or charisma damage. If you fail the associated save DC that's listed on the spell description, which, go to the Pathfinder system reference document online, or look this up in the advanced player's guide, or actually this particular spell would be in the core rulebook. It will have a chart with the different difficulties. The lowest difficulty creatures are going to be creatures from one of the elemental planes of existence. So the plane of fire, earth, water, wind, so on and so forth. Highest difficulty are going to be deities that live out on the outer realms. Now, one thing I play around with on this one, this is just kind of my own little homebrew house rule kind of thing, is I will make use of creatures that give one-word answers, but I will also make use of creatures that give somewhat lengthier answers. These creatures can be honest, they can attempt to lie, they may tell the players that they don't know the answer, or if they don't know, they may just make something up, which is, still lying, but, And in doing so, the creatures have more leeway on the information they give. And certainly, the higher in scale and power they go, the more likely I am to have the creature drone on maybe a little bit more. Well, maybe not drone, but maybe give a short sentence answer. Something that the players can play around with, make use of the information for, but they also understand that this means that I may lie to them with more clever fashions. Some clever wordplay or leaving certain details out. They need to be clever with the questions that they ask, and they need to be careful in discerning the fact from fiction. But not every DM will do this. Certainly, I think there's room to do so, but that's my own personal take on it. But going on after that, since we're on the planes anyways, we have planar adaptation. This one could be rated higher, especially if you're in a campaign that is focusing more on extraplanar travels, in which case, definitely grab this one. This is blue. It's absolutely essential. You target yourself, lasts 1 hour a level, so again, 13 hours, and this extract will grant you immunity to harmful effects in the environment of a particular plane of existence, including a lack of air. You will also gain an energy resistance of 20 to a single energy type that's prevalent to that particular plane. If you're on a plane, say like Avernus, the first layer of hell, there's a lot of fire there, so absolutely take the fire resistance for that plane. But if you're in the Abyss can throw so many different things at you. Acid, lightning, lack of air, just water that it's still water, but for some reason it's toxic to creatures from the mortal plane of existence. It's fine for plants, but you get the idea. Any number of different things, any number of types of strange energy damage types might exist there. Something homebrewed that DMs might throw at you. You're only allowed to pick one in those instances. But, still, having that extra barrier of protection is useful, and that's what makes this particularly useful, because there are other spells that would probably function a bit better in place of this. But barring those, say your party doesn't have them, this is all you have, well then this is going to be pretty damn handy for you. But going down from there, 5th level extracts do not have a lot of wiggle room on something being useful or something being kind of okay, at least in my read on it. There's not really a whole lot of ground there. It's either really good or bad. But this is one that's kind of in the middle, and that's Languid Bomb Admixture. You target yourself, and it's again a spell that's particular to the Alchemist. Lasts 1 round a level, and when you throw a bomb and you hit your target, it and up to 3 other creatures must make will saves or become fatigued. Fatigued is a good debuff. It's pretty handy. The problem is it's great for creatures that are vulnerable to fatigue. And at 13th level, you're going to be facing up against creatures that may not be vulnerable to it. Hell, even at lower levels, facing off against ghouls, vampires, mummies, elementals, the various low-level planar creatures like dretches and things like that, bearded devils, bone devils, all those different kinds of things. They're not really vulnerable to being fatigued. They can be it's something that probably would have been better as a 3rd level extract. Hell, even 4th level would have been acceptable. But it's here. It's certainly not a bad debuff to have, because there are plenty of creatures that are vulnerable to it, which is what keeps this from being something that I'd grade as a red and pretty bad choice, especially from a mechanical standpoint. That and the fact that it does not decrease your bomb damage in any way. Very, very useful. But for extracts that don't really work particularly well, especially for our Junkrat styled bomb throwing Alchemist build, Elude Time. Elude Time is one that sounds cool. I want it to be cooler. I want it to work better, but I can't think of many ways of making good use of this. None of the guides I've found elsewhere online really seem to think of ways to make good use of this. It's incredibly circumstantial. You target yourself, and it lasts 1 minute per level, so 13 minutes. You put yourself in suspended animation, and you can choose when the stasis expires. Choose up to that 13-minute limit. No force can harm you. All bodily functions cease. Nothing that could possibly be done to you will kill you. But it only lasts for 13 minutes. I can't imagine a situation where you'd be using this unless you're trying to fake your death somehow, in which case you have better options. And the thing is that no force can harm you, but your enemies, especially if they want to make sure you're dead. And at 13th level, you're either facing enemies, if they're not bright, they are still powerful enough to put you in bad situations, say Tyrannosaurus Rex, or something that can just swallow you whole. You're now trapped in their stomach, their gastrointestinal tract. You're dealing with that muscular action crushing down on you. all the gastric juices, those acids breaking down your body, your clothing, your equipment. It's not a good situation to be in. And if they are smart, well, they'll realize pretty quickly they can't hurt you, so they'll tie you up and dump your body in the river and let you drown once this expires. They'll start burning the house down around you, and fire will last longer than 13 minutes and you'll be trapped inside of it, buried underneath rubble potentially. There's just not a lot of good ways to use this, not without a lot of very, very careful preparation and thought out planning beforehand. But, if you can think of a clever use, please let me know down below. If you disagree on this one, please, yeah, absolutely, jump in. Let's talk about this one. Also, polymorph. Polymorph, particularly in this case, for the Alchemist, since we want to keep throwing bombs, is not an ideal choice, especially since we have other better options from earlier, like that spell, that extract that lets you turn into a gargoyle. Polymorph, you touch a living creature, lasts 1 minute per level, and you transform into an animal, humanoid, or elemental of your choice. You just have better choices. You go into an elemental form or some other humanoid creature or some kind of an animal. It's not great, and really this is probably a spell that's better left to the party's mage or wizard, or even any other arcane spellcaster can make better use of this and will make better use of this. For us, this is one I'd say you can safely avoid, especially since you're affecting yourself or the target creature touched. And that's the other thing. If you want to use this in some kind of an offensive capacity, say for some reason these forms, like you want to transform a terrifying monster into a rabbit, you can do that, but you have to get in close and touch them, and we're building ourselves to be bomb throwers. Unless the creature is somehow not able to attack you or is unlikely to attack you, say you have greater invisibility on board, then you could probably make use of this one and potentially shrink them down into a harmless form as you touch them. But, it's not without its risks, and certainly I think you have better options in this case. So do with that what you will. There is also one last spell on here that we have to talk about. I think we're going to talk about that particular spell in a separate video. I think it deserves its own separate video. It'll keep tied with the Alchemist here, but I might put it in its own category. Maybe I'll start up the Master of Lore spell guide or something like that. And that's Magic Jar. We'll get to that later. It can be a very good spell, but we'll deal with that in the other video. With that, we're going to wrap it up here because we're sitting right around the 17-minute mark now, and I'm trying to keep my time limits under control. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope it's been informative, useful, helpful for all of you, especially if you've ever been curious about the Alchemist class. It certainly is an underrated class. I know I've underestimated it. There's a lot of fun to be had here. There's so much potential. Just play around with it a little bit. By no means take this guide as set in stone. There's all sorts of homebrew, third-party stuff. There may be things that your DM wants to do to kind of jazz things up a little bit. And even then, there's just so many incredible uses out there. People's imaginations are amazing things, and you might find an incredible use for something like Elude Time that nobody's thought of before. That's just absolutely ingenious. So go out there, play around with it. And let me just say, if you have been enjoying today's content, maybe consider looking over in this region here. Right over in here, there should be 2 videos popped up for you. Things that YouTube's almighty algorithms think that you might be entertained by, that I've produced here. So maybe consider looking at those, and oh my goodness, the tag is out. At any rate, I've been your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire. Thank you all so much for your time. You all stay safe out there and have yourselves a good night. Tasty.